Sounds like it's doing something.
It's doing something, as we are going to talk about Ezekiel Elliott, as we call Jeff Manishen, lawyer to the stars. It's making the Skype sound, which is great for the audience and tremendous television. As it spins in front of me, doing nothing. Here it comes.
Hello, Jeff Manishen.
Is lawyer to the stars? Is that what it says?
I do think of you guys as stars, so yes, I'd say so.
Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning. How are you, Mike? How are you, David?
Fantastic. And, in this day and age, Jeff, it seems like, those of us who don't practice law, we take a look at things that happen in professional sport, and sometimes we scratch our head a little bit because we're unsure of, just how much power a league has. And so when you look at Ezekiel Elliott and the 6-game suspension, from a legal standpoint, and if, he or your client, I don't know if there's been something in terms of evidence that we've seen that allows the league to make the kind of judgment on his career that they did. So I'm wondering, who has the power here? Is it the league, or would it be the representation that Ezekiel Elliott has?
Well, let's start with the fact that it's not like the criminal trial process at all. We'll characterize it this way. The rules of the game are defined by the collective bargaining agreement. And I don't do labor and employment law, but I've read about it as it relates to this kind of stuff out of interest. And think of it as the NFLPA and the NFL sit down and they come up with a collective bargaining agreement that covers a whole host of things. Things like salary cap, obviously, and, whatever other features they build into it. But one of the features they built into it was an issue of discipline. In other words, how do they deal with conduct? And, Mike, the NFLPA, as we know, historically have never done a very good job of negotiating on behalf of the players. Don't they have the worst contract, the worst deal? They don't have guaranteed contracts. On this one, the system they agreed to gave essentially Goodell the power to determine discipline, and the first level of appeal was to Goodell or his designate.
Now, is this why
Crazy?
that you hear a lot of in the NHL, or the NFLPA saying when it comes up to the next negotiations that they're walking for sure, and discipline and some of those issues you just mentioned is a big part of why they believe that they will walk?
Absolutely. So let's come back then to this with respect to the process, okay, to explain to you the collective bargaining process. So it is an agreed-upon method, and you'll see sometimes in other employment situations and other contractual deals, that the issues can be resolved through arbitration. You might, hear about that. So in other words, it gets it out of the court system. So here, discipline, it's meant to be. The collective bargaining, here's our mechanism. And here's my best understanding of the way this process went. He had this committee of a number of different people, and they did a whole investigation that went on for the course of a year. You kind of wonder, it's domestic assault allegations in the context of, boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't know where it needs a year. Presumably, Elliott and his side had a chance to be able to provide some information, but it's not like there's any hearing or anything. You have these investigators, and then they release this report that's like 160 pages in length. And on the strength of it, discipline is imposed of 6 games. Opportunity to challenge or test the allegations. Like there's no hearing. Think of it. Investigators talk to this group, look at pictures, look at police reports, and, presumably get input from him and his side. And then they say, well, this is what happened, or this is our conclusion, this is where discipline is warranted. We have medical evidence of bruising, so it tends to confirm her story. Okay? We know since Ray Rice, the league is taking a much more careful and cautious view of ensuring that they're extra strict on issues of domestic violence. So what happens? 6 games. It's a pretty healthy bang.
Yeah, it sure is. Now let's break down what you kind of just talked about there. My problem is, and because I don't know what has happened, so I can't sit there and say, oh, he did or he didn't. But either way, whatever these allegations are, they haven't been proven in court. Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been proven guilty or not guilty in court. But yet the NFL can deem taking away 6 games of his season based on their findings. Shouldn't there be some sort of marriage between the courts in the United States and the NFL before the NFL could actually make a judgment like this?
Well, to take that in 2 ways, Dave, if you had a conviction, certainly. They could say, look, we have the conduct clearly established beyond a reasonable doubt, and a criminal conviction is a character issue that reflects so badly on the league, we're going to sanction you for the criminal conduct. But if you back up a step and say, we have an allegation, and in fact here, these were investigated by the police who determined there wasn't enough to be able to even proceed with a charge.
Mm-hmm.
So to stay with your point, well, if there isn't enough for a charge, how on earth can you make a finding of misconduct that merits punishment?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is, at least at this first level, it would seem, they have, and it presumably is covered by the collective bargaining agreement. So I get you back into that forum, is presumably they can do their investigation and do a report to the commissioner who has the authority to impose a punishment, and then there's a potential appeal to his designate. It's all staying away from the courts, an appeal to his designate. And that seems to be the stage that we're at. Now, from what I've been reading and hearing, there were some features that seem to have come to the attention of Elliott's side that might cause some real question on the credibility of the complainant. And so now, just for the moment, let's park that for a sec. In my world, because I do criminal defense work, I've done lots of domestic assault cases for years. And certainly there are a number of them where it's resolved by way of a plea, where there's no issue about the conduct. But there are others where the allegations are, I'd say, false. Mm-hmm. They can come from emotion, they can come from revenge, they can come from matrimonial discord. There's a host of different reasons. And you can never get into the realm of saying, because there's an allegation plus there's bruises equal, it happened.
Well, can you fall into a category where people then point the finger and call it, I guess, witness shaming? Would that be a phrase that comes up from time to time?
Well, if you wanted to get into the realm, Mike, of sort of, we'll call it political correctness. I call it challenging the credibility of a complainant. I mean, there was a case recently in Toronto involving some Toronto police officers.
Right.
And you'll recall that there was allegations of sexual misconduct, sexual assault in the context of a function they were being with another, police officer. And the judge, who's an excellent judge named Anne Malloy, she said, the phrase we hear, "we believe survivors," has no place in the criminal justice system. And you remember in the John Ghomeshi case, remember the people protesting outside the courthouse, "We believe survivors"? Why would you conclude they're a survivor on the mere fact they've made an allegation?
Mm-hmm.
That's working everything in reverse. That's presuming the matter in issue. You got to start by saying we have an allegation. Let's keep an open mind. I'd like to think, and maybe this isn't in the collective bargaining agreement, an allegation of misconduct is made against an NFL player, and he doesn't get the benefit of the presumption of innocence. And in fact, if it's an allegation of domestic violence, okay, it's not a bar fight, okay? Because it's domestic violence, we're going to believe the survivor, we're going to believe the complainant, and anything that might challenge the complainant's credibility is witness shaming? I mean, challenges to the credibility in the Ghomeshi case led to the acquittal because there were real questions about the reliability of what they said.
Mm-hmm.
And again, to bring it back to my world, the worst thing you could do is you've got an allegation of physical, domestic abuse, and we start with the basis it happened. Well, how do you get there? So now let's bring it back to Elliott. Well, if the standard is less than proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and then let's say that the commissioner has to be satisfied it happened, and he's got his investigators, but he's satisfied it happened. Where's the place for a challenge to the story? Is there any room for that? And we may well see it and hear about it at the appeal level. But, I don't know that it'll be a matter at this appeal level of, for example, Elliott's lawyers being able to cross-examine her. I don't know that that'll happen. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I was just going to ask you. What is the next step? Is the appeal the next step? And what do you think in reading your findings, what will eventually happen here?
Well, I think, Dave, let me take almost a practical kind of view. This guy, Harold Henderson. So this time around, by the way, unlike Tom Brady, Goodell, instead of appealing for sitting as the appellate tribunal, he's referred it out to this guy Harold Henderson, and he's got some experience doing the sorts of things. It wouldn't shock me if he knocks the suspension down, 6 games down to 4 games or something like that. Throws something over to Elliott's side. Certainly, if we stay with that for a sec, if Elliott's side says, "Look, here are real issues to challenge the strength of the allegations," does that mean, okay, maybe the allegations aren't true, so we'll reduce the penalty? You might have thought maybe the allegations aren't true, and so we'll set it aside. I'm not going to think I don't think that's going to happen. And then the issue of how does it ever get to the courts? You remember with Brady, it worked its way all the way up through the various appellate courts?
Yep.
It didn't get there on a pure review of the decision. In other words, was the suspension right or wrong? The review was based on process, that it was that essentially it was a fundamentally unfair hearing process, and that's what the appellate courts had to consider. Did he effectively have a hearing that complied with the basic principles of fairness that are needed for an arbitration, not the penalty? And ultimately, you'll recall that the suspension ultimately was upheld. That was I read a couple of those decisions, and the focus there was it fair process? And because you see, the courts say, look, if you guys have your collective bargaining agreement, you have your whole method and your appeal, and we aren't getting involved. You guys have contracted into your method to resolve these issues. Don't look at us. So now the appeal, I don't know, Dave. I don't think that the appeal involves a hearing where she testifies and she's cross-examined. I think it's going to be on let's characterize it as the written record.
So now this is just from a non I guess a lawyer type like myself.
I use that phrase sometimes. I'm going to speak to you not as a lawyer but as a human being.
Exactly. No, just
the rules are sometimes mutually exclusive.
Yeah. So
a prof that I met years ago at University from Arkansas, he said, "There's two kinds of law, Jeffrey. There's the book law, and there's the folk law."
So, in your opinion, and this is just from a football fan's point of view, based on the NFL's collective bargaining agreement and what they have in place for this sort of thing, do you find it odd that the NFL would set up the rule of what Tom Brady did, which essentially was adding air to a football based on, okay, if you're going to do that, we're going to give you 4 games. But if you're going to beat a spouse or a person, we're going to add 2 more games to that. So the differences between adding air to a football
or taking air out,
or taking air out compared to an allegation of abuse, which clearly the NFL has said that this has happened, is a difference of 2 games. Does that remotely make any sense in the big scheme of things?
Well, Dave, here's how I could get there. Okay, is number one, the conduct in relation to the spouse will characterize it as behavior that reflects on the individual's character and in turn on the league. Okay, that it reflects badly on the individual and on the general reputation. Remember, we got to protect the shield, right, is the phrase.
Sure, yes.
On the other hand, if you're deflating a football that's used in play that could potentially interfere with the outcome of the game, and that's contrary to rules. So essentially, now we're into the integrity of the game itself. Some might say that's more serious because that goes to, the fans are looking for a true and fair and proper and valid outcome of the competition. And if you're distorting it, one could make a case to say that in certain respects is more serious. Okay, but if we return back for a second in terms of rules and so forth, I mean, we've seen it in baseball too, right? Didn't we have, was it Jose Reyes was suspended for a period of time, and I don't think his wife wanted to proceed. I think they just diverted the case.
Correct, yes.
And there was another guy, I think a pitcher, who was it that fired shots in his garage, and no charges or anything, and he got suspended. I mean, in other sports, in baseball, let's go back to this one. Is it really right to suspend guys when a case has not even resulted in a criminal charge?
Yeah, see, that's what I think, too.
That's the part that I really have some trouble with. Because if we're gonna suspend on an allegation, or if we say, okay, it's an allegation where in a hearing where you don't have a chance to confront your accuser, you can still get suspended.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Right? That's the part that bothers me.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, did we ever decide on what your theme song should be? What band was singing? I can't remember.
I left it to you guys. I mean, I love soul music.
Soul music.
Okay.
All right. Well,
yeah.
This show is just reeks of soul.
I have. There's so much soul. I mean, I've seen James Brown live and in concert a number of times. Got his autograph. Got to shake his hand. Okay, so. Yeah. But I don't know if he talks about law. But hey, that's the theme. There's our musical beat.
Well, Steve Phillips had a James Brown theme song, so it can be done.
I was jealous. I was jealous.
Well, you should, you have nothing to be jealous about. I will just say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you really don't. You really don't.
Because now, Mike, I know that you're on the show. Okay, we got a little more time. I promised you guys I'd let you guys get more than 3 words in, and I've done that.
Yeah, you've done. Yeah.
Wow, I'm overwhelmed.
Check the boxes.
Yeah, really
you're in.
There we go. Other questions? I mean, this is the kind of thing that's lots of fun. And what we've identified here, and by Dave, your question, you can see that people who aren't familiar with the justice system and don't work in it have some questions, and there's not really that great a mechanism or form for an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things I've done for many years, I've done public speaking, I do TV and radio, legal commentary regularly. People are fascinated by this stuff.
Well, it is.
And if you can demystify it, and you say, you wonder about it, if I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. But if I do, you say, okay, great, I understand it now. Now I can sort of proceed to read the stories and follow the case with a different perspective.
Does this mean by making an appearance like this that you have embraced yourself even further with Ross McBride? Is that what happens? Well,
Ross McBride is very happy for this, but what
Yes.
it is, Mike, it's a return to my roots, okay? I used to do CBC TV and radio when I was a kid. I was an ACTRA member so long ago that, my union number was 6. No, that's an old joke. That's an old joke.
Yeah, that's good. You
But
go
the
on
number
the high.
actually I had an ACTRA number. It was W474 back in the 60s.
Wow.
Before you guys, I got pants older than you guys. Back, right? I used to do TV and radio for this kind of stuff. It's now, it's fun.
Who were you?
And it's interesting.
Who were you representing? Bruno Gerussi? I mean, what?
Oh no, I was a kid. I was on TV when I was a kid.
Oh, you were on as a kid.
I was TV and radio when I was a kid. I did CBC radio dramas.
You were an actor, is what
Yes.
you're telling me.
Yeah. I acted professionally from when I was 9. So now you get into this stuff, and you say, well, I guess to be a good lawyer, you got to be a good actor. No, there are a lot of lawyers that are bad actors.
I won't disagree with that.
But on the other hand, if you can do it, if you have a sense of performance and communication in your audience, as you guys know, it's what you're looking for, basically keeping your audience not only entertained but engaged.
Yeah.
That's the same thing for me.
Yeah, I see it. You know what? Next time you come on, we will have the James Brown theme song for you. This is what we're going to do.
And you know
for
what I'll say to that?
What?
Ow! Ain't it funky now?
Boy, Ross McBride, there's a proud moment for them right there, Jeff. I gotta be honest. That was,
Ross McBride isn't funky, okay?
Yeah.
But for me, okay, this is a return to funk. I mean, if you listen to you watch TV ads and stuff, how often do you hear James Brown songs
he's ripped off all the time.
backing up advertising?
Yeah, absolutely.
That stuff is as vibrant and lively and impactful today as it was in the 50s, 60s.
I don't disagree. Hey, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us here this morning. Always appreciate it. Look forward to the next time.
Okay, that's great. Good chatting with you guys. All the best.
Thank you.
Jeff Manishen from Ross McBride, and also previously a huge actor on CBC.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.